Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I'm very, very excited for all of you and us to kind of have a live discussion about revenue leak and revenue precision. Before we get started, I want to talk through a few housekeeping items. First off, this session will be recorded and it'll be shared out with registrants and attendees, so you will have access to it afterwards for your review or to share with your peers. Second, participants are muted right now, except we are going to break out in a breakout room so that you can talk to your peers, so that you can talk to other revenue leaders. This is meant to be an interactive discussion. So when we go into breakout rooms, you will come off mute and we all just get to talk to each other about all the revenue, challenges and solutions that we're facing. So third piece is, I know there's going to be different parts of this where we get to break out into rooms and talk to each other. We want the entire thing to be interactive. So please submit questions in the chat. If we don't get to it, we'll make sure that we get to it afterwards. So thank you so much for joining us. My name's Jeannie Ford. I'm on the product marketing team at Clary. I am joined with a whole host of awesome folks today. We have Kevin Canarium, our CRO at Clary. We have Connor, our SVP of our Customers for Life team. Josh runs our VP. He's our VP of Revenue Operations. Zach Miller, the VP of Enterprise and Strategic Sales at HighSpot. And then we have all of you. So today's session is really about connecting with revenue peers, with revenue leaders, with revenue experts, and really exchanging ideas and hearing from each other. So here's the agenda today. We have about 30 minutes or so. I want to spend just a few minutes setting the stage and talking about what is revenue leak, since we're spending the next 30 minutes on this topic. And then we'll break out into rooms for about 10 minutes or so, where you get to connect with the different revenue leaders and your peers to really discuss it. And then we get to hear from a customer himself, Zach, who's going to talk about how they achieved revenue precision over at HighSpot. And then we'll leave you with just some closing resources so that there are next steps and you're able to really action this within your organization. So first off, this entire discussion is really about revenue leak, but what is revenue leak? As somebody on product marketing, I get to talk to analysts, I talk to customers, I talk to kind of revenue leaders across the world. And one of the terms that I keep hearing coming up over and over again, not just at Clary, but everywhere across the industry, is this term revenue leak. And so that's why we thought it was so important to spend the time. And how do we define that? Well, some might define that as the biggest problem hiding in plain sight. Why? Because BCG did a study and they realized that $2 trillion, sorry, this is flipped a little bit, but $2 trillion of economic value is destroyed every year by revenue leak. And Clary Labs, our in-house data science team, looks at all the data across all of our customers, and they analyzed it, and they realized that about 15% of a company's revenue is lost due to revenue leak. But the biggest problem hiding in plain sight is not quite a good definition, right? So what revenue leak is revenue that you've earned, but you haven't captured. And I'll repeat that one more time. Revenue that you've earned, that you deserve to have, but you have not captured. It's that deal that you were counting on that slipped into next quarter. It's that sales rep that's known for heavily discounting. Those forecasts that you are not capturing right. And it shows up, and there's a number of reasons why it exists today. So let's talk about that really quick. First off, the consumer landscape has completely changed. And as consumers, I think we all understand this, right? 20 years ago, we were okay calling into a business, explaining to them our problem, explaining that to a few different reps, having them take a voicemail, and then calling us back a week later. This has all shifted. Right now, consumers want answers and they want them now. They don't want to have to explain themselves. They want businesses to be able to read their minds. And consumers and businesses are no longer seen as separate entities. Right now, consumers want to be best friends with the business. They want them to understand what pains they have, how to solve it, and they want them to solve it right away. And as a response, organizations such as yourself have had to centralize their revenue teams and bring together all their revenue critical employees. And about 50% of every organization's employees are revenue critical. Now, the problem with that is bringing those teams together has exposed the disparate teams, the disparate data, the disparate processes. And most technology hasn't been able to keep up with how we run revenue today. In fact, most technology you're using to run revenue is most likely 3 decades old. Spreadsheets, BI, CRM. And that means that your revenue critical employees have a hard time collaborating on and governing that revenue process, which is where that revenue leak is coming from. And so now that we understand why there is revenue leak, where is it within your org, and how does this kind of, how does this ladder down to your day-to-day? Is it that transition from sales to customer success? Is it because of manual data entry? This can show up in a ton of places across your organization. And this slide is scary. And there are a lot of different places that it can show up, where deals are slipping, sellers are forecasting differently. You don't know where to allocate resources because that data is not available right away. And that's what we want to spend time talking about today. So this is when we jump into the fun part with breakout room discussions. So we are going to break out into, we have 3 breakout rooms. The first one is revenue leaders, really for finance executive teams. Kevin Canarium, our CRM, is going to lead this breakout room. The second one is with Connor Nolan, our SVP of Customers for Life. This is for the sales, customer success, revenue teams. And then the third, Josh Van Gies gets to lead. He is our VP of Revenue Operations. And that's for ops and kind of that IT audience. And what we want you to discuss, and take advantage of this time, because you have all your revenue peers and leaders in one room, to talk about where are you seeing the most revenue leak within your business? And if you are solving for it, how are you? And we just want this to be an interactive discussion. So now I'll prompt you to jump into the breakout rooms, and you should see that on your screen. And we'll take about 10 minutes, then regroup here. Everybody made it back. I think all our attendees made it back as well, right? Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much for the awesome discussion. I was kind of jumping in between rooms and just listening in where I could. There were a lot of great conversations. I would love to hear just a quick recap while we have you here, Kevin and Josh and Connor.
Yeah.
You want to fight for who's going first?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. I think, it's probably very similar to the other groups. Pipeline and deal stage progression was a big topic. Why? Because we're all collectively seeing sales stages take longer, opportunities slip, and more folks coming into the buying committee. And so how do you actually start to analyze what are you seeing per stage, and what are some of the things that you can start to do to affect time and stage and slippage that not only impacts what's happening there, but you might make different decisions or use different tactics up funnel. Maybe you need more coverage in this environment, maybe different kind of coverage. And so looking at symptoms actually helps you take action on revenue leak. So I'd say pipeline was the big one. And then obviously the customer journey was second, but I'm assuming Connor will probably go there.
You teed me right up. So the conversation that we had in our room was very much around the customer journey and customer advocacy. I think more so now than ever, customers expect to be kind of guided through their journey in using the product, adopting the product, and evolving with their consumption and investment in the product. And I think especially in a customer business, especially one with lots of different stakeholders, sales engineers, customer success managers, account managers, product, it's that advocacy. I love that word that got brought up in our breakout, which is like, how do you advocate for your customer so that they're constantly being aware of where they can grow, invest, and especially nowadays consolidate onto your platform, such that the sprawl of things they might be doing elsewhere can be more centralized into a single place where they can be getting more benefit from a single solution.
I love that. Customer advocacy. That makes a lot of sense just with the changing consumer landscape that we talked about as well. Josh, I'll let you kind of do a quick overview.
Yeah, a lot of similarities across the group in terms of topics, a little bit different than what Kevin and Connor talked about. Really focused in on connection points, handoffs, transitions, and inefficiencies that can happen within your funnel when people are using different tools, different data, replicating the same discovery questions, passing data through various places. And so a lot of conversations around, hey, we can cram in a lot more top of funnel into an inefficient funnel. We can work on improving an inefficient and leaky funnel into something that's more efficient, or we can do both. And even some solutioning that was done in there in terms of implementing sequence of events, a recurring cadence, analyzing data. And even got a quick shout out for our internal platform and the benefits of Waterfall to be able to describe and add fidelity to conversations around what's happening when things are pushing and pulling across quarters and months.
Yeah, gotcha. So pipeline, customer advocacy, kind of inefficiencies in the funnel. I mean, it sounds like they're all interconnected in some sort of way. So it's always awesome kind of just learning from your peers and hearing that we all have the same challenges. I think the other trend that I was hearing is, realistically, we all have revenue leak. There's no organization that doesn't, regardless of your size. And the big thing is, it's not about eliminating that revenue leak all at once. It's about kind of identifying kind of the different sources of it and then finding out what's top priority so that you can achieve revenue precision. But you're probably asking what revenue precision is. Well, that is when you get your operating standards so dialed in that you are fully capturing all your revenue predictably and repeatedly. So a fun term that we love to use and that we're seeing our customers really achieve. And I can't think of any better way to kind of bring this to life than to hear from a customer himself. So we have Zach Miller here, VP of Enterprise and Strategic Sales at HighSpot. Zach, I would love if you can give a quick intro just on HighSpot as a company.
Sure. So HighSpot is a sales enablement platform that basically allows teams to equip, train, and coach their revenue-facing teams and make sure that they know what they're supposed to be doing in any given situation. They're able to execute on it, right? We're just over actually about 1,100 employees now. We've got 5 global offices, a ton of users around the world, and like a lot of folks I imagine online here, we've been in hyper growth for the last number of years, and obviously there's a little bit of a transition in mindset going on right now. So there's a lot more focus on the precision and less precision and efficiency and less growth at any cost, right?
Yeah, we're hearing that theme quite a bit. And I know you've been working on kind of, and I'll just stop sharing my screen for a second. So I know you've been working on kind of, driving this revenue precision for the last few years now. Going back to the very start of it, just curious, how did you know you even had a revenue leak problem, and kind of, how did you go about identifying those different sources of revenue leak?
Well, I mean, back to the very beginning, it was really just a forecasting problem, right? We've been Claric customers for maybe 3 years or so. Okay. And it was just, we had this sort of bow wave of deals just sort of pushing out into next quarters and next quarters and next quarters, right? And so we really didn't have this, multiple quarter, view of forecasting, and we really didn't have much accuracy. We also had this scenario where we'd have, everything closes on the last day of the quarter, right? And so just by putting in sort of a monthly motion, we peanut butter spread that across the months of the quarter really, really well. And by putting in a multiple quarter forecasting motion, it helped us avoid that sort of bow wave of deals that just sort of keep pushing out into the future. So that was initially the sort of the driver behind bringing Clarion. More recently, there have been some pretty interesting things we've been able to caught. Now we've really matured in the platform. So
would love to hear about that, because I know just with economic, everything changing, organizations are obviously shifting. So it started off as forecasting and kind of bringing that from a quarterly into a monthly or just a more regular cadence. What are kind of the other things that have been coming about?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, there's as I was looking at your slide that had the various columns and like a little bit of an eye chart. There's a lot of possible sources.
Scary. Yes.
And the thing that jumped out at me were the executive insights, and underneath that was the resource allocation thing. I think is really interesting, right? And this aligns with something that we've kind of caught over maybe the last 6 months or so, and really started to drill down on. And I'll set the stage for it like this: like, if you think about good reps, they like to under promise and over deliver, right? That's just sort of natural. And I'm pretty cool with that as they're speaking to prospects or customers. Like I think that's a good mindset to have. But internally, actually don't want them to underpromise and overdeliver. Internally, I want them to accurately promise and accurately deliver, right? There's no points for super conservatism, right? And so this is how this started to show up is so like I promise I'll tie this to resource allocation in a second here. So let's just call my average deal size X, right? And let's say at 2X, that's kind of where managers start to feel okay, like raising their hand for some special treatment, some special resources for the deal. Out around 4 to 6X is where those things start to naturally happen, right? Like back to your slide that had like the disparate teams and like different, people who are always trying to impact the revenue. But this is like where execs start to offer help, right? Where investors start to offer help, where product starts to say, hey, are things looking good? Is there anything we need to tweak on the roadmap? We start to see field marketing and partner teams like sort of naturally descend, and that's a good thing, right? You want those big deals to naturally rise to the top and start to attract those resources, and you want that to happen early when there's still the ability to impact the deal, right? Like if you're waiting until your final stage or last couple stages of the sales process, like there's not that much left you can do. You've missed most of your exits. You've made most of your plays. You make your plays early on to set the stage so that you can win the deals, right? But the problem is most of the reps were putting deals in at like 0.5 to 0.2 of average deal size because they want to underpromise. They don't want to like inflate their pipeline. They don't want you to think lots of times they just don't want scrutiny. They don't want the light of the sun on those things. They don't want to be asked the tough questions, right?
That's fair.
And so what we've done recently, which is super simple and super easy to do within Clarity, is just created a dashboard that shows me, like for the last month, what deals went into the pipeline that are less than, we've actually set it like 0.75 of the ACV, right? So it just sort of says, hey, these are things that kind of don't make sense. Do we need to adjust these? Like, why are we only saying we're going to sell, 100 licenses to a company that has 3,000 salespeople? That's not going to solve the problem. Let's go accurately reflect this deal so that we can make sure that the resources are flowing towards it. And the beauty is, as we started to do that, and people realize that they're not just signing up for like some uncomfortable examination of what they're doing, but they start to see that the resources are flowing, and they're sort of encouraged positively to make that change. Like we're seeing velocities move, just like early stage deals move faster, right? Because all those resources are flowing to those stages. We're seeing the win rates ultimately like increase because, like I said, we're able to make those plays earlier, right? We're able to get partners involved earlier. We're able to get investors involved earlier. And so it's kind of interesting that that's that one little thing is making some pretty quick, impact.
Yeah, I love hearing that. So it's almost a mindset shift, right? Like it's let's look at our entire pipeline, look at all the deals that are under ACV shift or a certain ACV, and then kind of we're going to talk to those salespeople and shift that mindset into, hey, we're helping you. We're not scrutinizing you. So I love hearing that. That's a very good perspective. Were there any big kind of like challenges you faced as you were rolling that out? I mean, obviously it is a mindset shift, so you are going to deal with that, but.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I'd say, and most people probably recognize that, like there are certain reps who loved it. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna call every deal at 7-figure deal, and then so you want to make people think that, they're not the boy who called wolf, right? But and then there are reps who are like, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. There's nothing here, and they sort of dig their heels in. So you can't. It's just like managing, forecasts. There's going to be people who are rose-colored glasses and people who are, super conservative and sandbagging. And those same people tended to kind of mirror up early stage as we were looking at these things. And so you still have to sort of be able to temper those various things. But those are the challenges I think that we saw.
Yeah, that's fair. And it's about kind of getting the early adopters right, and then you get the rest of the team to tag on. So super, super amazing to hear. Were there any kind of hard metrics that you'd like to share out at all? I know you've kind of been running these forecasting processes for a while, and now you're kind of looking at.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't know that we have the hard metrics to share at the moment, but
No pressure at all. No.
Directionally, it's moving in the right direction. So it's
no worries. Any kind of any key takeaways for the audience here? Kind of anyone else that's looking to drive revenue precision? Just words of advice.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of intuition that goes to this stuff, right? Like, again, back to the eye chart of like there's a zillion things there, and like there you probably, as you glance through those, are instantly maybe drawn towards one or the other. And that probably means there's something there, and then from there you can kind of go digging in with the data within Clary, and really either prove or disprove your gut instinct, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think that goes with what we kind of said earlier with, everybody has revenue leak. It's about kind of identifying the different parts and then looking at which you can tackle first that will have the most immediate impact.
And I think it's also finding like you could probably go through and check like every single one of those, but thinking about which, like, you can't boil the ocean, right? Which of those is going to have the biggest impact? Like, where are you going to get the most juice for your squeeze, right? And tackle those first.
Yeah, I love that advice, Zach. I know we're running a little bit over on time, so I am going to just kind of leave folks with some closing resources so you aren't just left hanging. Thank you so much for joining us, Zach. I really appreciate it. And I just I want to leave some closing remarks for folks so you know where to go next as we talk about this revenue leak. And it's, the one thing I do have to say, though, is I get so excited to talk to customers like Zach and all of ours, because achieving revenue precision isn't just some sort of philosophical thing. There are real hard numbers and real impacts to the business. 80% increase in sales team productivity across our customer base, a 15% increase in win rates by year 2, decreased deal slippages. So this results in real gains. And the first step, even like Zach said, I think we're completely aligned, Zach, is the first step to achieving revenue precision is really identifying which sources of revenue leak to tackle. And that's where I do want to leave just a couple of closing resources. We do have a revenue leak assessment that will be sent out afterwards, where you can input your company's data and really understand where is it impacting your business the most and where can we focus. And the second thing I would say is connect with your revenue leak experts. If you're a Clary customer, talk to your CSM. If you are, not, and that's completely fine, talk to a sales rep, because we have experts across the industry that really understand how to pinpoint these different sources and where you can even start with this massive problem. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll be sending out this recording after. Appreciate all the great conversation and the discussion. Take care and have a great day.
Thanks for joining us.